Welcome to week 117 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
I'm wearing another Flash shirt. This is the Golden Age Flash in honor of John Wesley Shipp. We watched episode 5, 6, 7 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Monday, October 20th, 1986. Eden opens the door to Martin Ellis. She tells him to meet her in the casino in an hour, but she's unable to get away from Cruz, so she tries to page him instead, but it's unable to reach him to tell him not to go to Santa Barbara until they can talk. So I feel like Martin Ellis is going to be in Santa Barbara long before Cruz and Eden get back.
I feel like that too.
Now, what kind of trouble will he stir up with Victoria? There may be more to their story than we know yet.
There may be, but I don't think that the actor's run on Santa Barbara is going to be really that long. So I suspect he's going to be there primarily to drive another wedge between Eden and Cruz.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Cruz will be very angry when he finds out that Eden has sent Martin there, and I'm sure Victoria will be more than happy to tell him. Cruz and Eden move to the chateau, where Philippe, the butler, tells them about the ghosts of Edward and Anne who lived there in the 1600s. And so for the rest of the episodes, they're talking about seeing ghosts while they set up their romantic evening. Lily tries to make friends with Gina, as is the plan, even though she's upset with the way Gina treated Haley. Gina invites Lily to move in with her at that dumpy little motel room, and we see a scene of Lily trying to find space in the closet for a white robe. Haley refuses to marry Ted and is taken into custody. Gina tries to talk her into marrying Ted. Haley says she doesn't want to hear anything from Gina as long as she lives. Mason tries to talk Haley into marrying Ted. Cece tries to talk Ted into marrying Haley. Sophia tries to talk Haley into marrying Ted. Ted and Haley change their minds and agree to get married. Sophia tries to make peace with Brick. Brick says, I don't hate you. I hate that I didn't have you before, and I hate that you have children that are more important. But just then the maitre d' tells Sophia the wedding's about to begin, and Brick stalks out, thinking this was just a way to divert Brick's attention from the wedding that he is so opposed to. Before going ahead with the wedding, Haley makes Ted swear that he's not in love with her, and he lies saying that he is not, and she, of course, lies to say that she's not in love with him. So they both agree, not being in love with each other, that it's fine to go ahead with the marriage. It was kind of a funny thing, so I assume they will. I will assume they'll end up happily married after some short period of time. Judge McAllister refuses to perform the ceremony because he sees that it's just been set up to obstruct justice. So Mason says, Lily, you're ordained, aren't you? You're going to perform the ceremony. So really not much moved forward in this episode.
No.
They were not married They're about to get married at the end of the last episode, and they're about to get married at the end of this one. And Eden and Cruz have lost track of Martin Ellis. So that's basically all that happened in this episode.
Brick is still mad at everybody, and there's still a threat to Eden and Cruz's relationship, as there so often is.
So that was the whole episode. Basically, largely circling around Ted and Haley for the people who are on this side of the pond. And so we will be back after we watch episode 568 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Keith, when you used to dance with my sister, was she light on her feet?
I don't remember her feet.
She probably wasn't on them much.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 568 of Santa Barbara. Another day, another Flash shirt. Ted says, I don't want to be married by Lily Light. Haley says, me either. I'd rather be married by a wino off the street. Mason searches the police station for a ring for Ted and Haley and buys one off one of Ginger's girls. As Mason approaches, one of them shouts, Mason, are you here to get us off? He says, that Ginger has got a new lawyer now for them, which makes sense since he's now the DA. And another reference to Ginger without ever having seen her since her last appearance. Meanwhile, Gina is looking around for a bouquet and dismantles a police station plant in order to take the flower off of it. Rick tries to stop the wedding again, and Mason has him arrested for being drunk. During the ceremony, Sophia decides her son deserves better than a ring bought by Mason, and so hands one of her rings to Ted to give to Haley. And Ted and Haley get married. Lily tries to visit Brick, and he is very annoyed that it's her, and then Sophia joins them, and he's angry with her as well. But by the end of the episode, he and Sophia hug.
Yeah.
Gina arranges for the presidential suite at the Capwell Hotel, kicking out a hapless Martin Ellis, who is just about to check in. Now, interesting, Gina says, you've probably had this booked for weeks, but this is a special occasion. But I think he did not have it booked for weeks, since he just decided to come to Santa Barbara that morning. But he said he basically didn't care anyway.
It's funny how she can so easily get a room at the Capwell Hotel, but she's still living in that Fleabag hotel that she's been in for the last couple of years, I think.
She's throwing around that Mrs. Capwell name already. And interesting, she recognized famous tennis player Martin Ellis and knew that he was on tour. So I guess he's as famous in his way as Victoria Lane is as an actress.
Yes.
And Martin has moved to room, I think it was 818, though it might have been 808. So we see the return of that presidential suite now. It's interesting that last time a Capwell was in there, someone went flying out the window. So interesting that Ted and Haley are going to be forced to honeymoon there.
And we still haven't caught that cat burglar, have we?
No. So they basically, Ted and Haley check in there reluctantly because Mason says, you're going to have to at least put on a good show for at least a year, which kind of surprises them. So Ted starts to undress in the living room while Haley goes to the bedroom. Martin watches Victoria having dinner with Pearl at the Orient Express and assumes that that's Cruz. He follows them to Pearl's apartment where he witnesses Victoria touching Pearl's face as she says, "I would like to sculpt you."
Surprising.
Yeah, we find out that Victoria is a sculptor, and she said she was, was doing it a lot more before she became an actress, and that she's very good. So that might be something.
There you go.
Maybe I don't know if that's a direction they plan to take her when she sticks around in Santa Barbara and can't act anymore. Famous sculptors in soap operas that I can think of are Rachel Corrie from Another World, who was a sculptor because Victoria Wyndham was a sculptor. So we'll see if this goes anywhere, or if it was just a thing to get Martin to, once again, misinterpret Victoria and Pearl's relationship. Later at the Orient Express, they go back and forth a lot there, don't they? Because Victoria was on her way home, but I think he ended up at the Orient Express with her. Anyway, they have a huge argument over whether they're together and whether they were supposed to be seeing other people while they were apart, etc. And Victoria basically breaks up with them and tells him it's over.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's going to do for the last 8 episodes that he's in town.
We'll see. Very intriguing.
Gina catches Cece and Sophia together in the Capwell atrium and tells them they better make hay while they can because it'll all end in 2 weeks when she and Cece marry. Sophia climbs into Cece's lap and he carries her up the stairs as ignoring Gina's shouts about Clause 34 in their wedding agreement.
Which she admits herself is not yet binding.
Yes. So Gina was in and out of that house quite a bit and wandering around giving orders at the Orient Express and basically giving around orders at the wedding at the police station. So she basically took over this episode. Courtney and Keith come home to the Capwell mansion after their date. Keith tries to kiss her, but she assumes he's only interested in trying to get those photos. He says he's not only interested in the photos and wonders how she compares to her sister Madeline. Does not seem to me like Courtney's necessarily in any way romantically interested in Keith.
No, she sort of playfully suggests a nightcap. Then he says he'll come in for a milk, and then she kind of shuts him down, and then she basically tosses him out. So.
He promptly sneaks back in after, because she had told him she hid the photos very well. And there's a hilarious scene of him searching the atrium, which involves him jumping up like a monkey on those two very tall planters that they have that are probably at least 7 feet tall, and trying to look inside the top to see if that's where she's put the photos. Courtney has, of course, removed the little loose stone in the atrium decor, and just brought them up to her room, as far as we could tell. So they are no longer there. There was some comment about Keith wanting to go back to her room, but I think she said that he just wanted to search for the photos. Then at the end of the episode, Courtney has a nightmare. We hear Keith's voice on the phone talking about how Madeline was killed, and we see Madeline's dead body at Courtney's feet. And then when Courtney wakes up, she hallucinates that her hands are covered in blood. So this does not bode well for Courtney. Perhaps
possible foreshadowing.
She is the killer after all. And from the look of it, maybe she doesn't remember that she's the killer. So if she is the killer, maybe she thinks Keith did it. But she's pretty jovial about the whole thing. Like, she's playing with Keith, but not really. Doesn't seem to be worried that he'll kill her, or that all that concerned that he killed her sister. So either way, I hope we have some fun things. That Madeline didn't actually appear in this episode.
No.
They just showed someone wearing clothing lying on the floor. So but we've still got, I think, 7 or 8 appearances by Madeline coming up in the coming months. So I don't know if that'll be the ghost of Madeline, like the one that appeared to Kirk Cranston after his heart transplant, or if these will all be flashbacks. But yeah, she still has 1/3 of her full set of appearances yet unaired.
Wow.
So, all right, we will be back after we watch episode 569 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Oh, you got a ring. Great.
What do you think of it?
Well, it's round. What'd you do, get it from one of your ex-girlfriends who was being booked?
Let's not consider the source, shall we?
You're right, we should. We could probably make Haley and Ted feel like they're not even getting married in a police station.
Well, we can do our best.
You make me so emotional. I know I'm being silly. But I always want to cry at weddings.
I imagine your husbands do the same thing.
Nancy Reagan and I, we both just love the Beach Boys.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 569 of Santa Barbara. And this week in 1986, Cyndi Lauper's True Colors was number 1. It's Wednesday, October 22nd, 1986. And Eden finds out that Martin is in Santa Barbara. And Cruz and Eden dance at the chateau alongside the ghosts of Edward and Anne. So I don't know how long this trip to the chateau will be, but I wonder if they'll actually be chatting with the ghosts at some point.
Now, we should say that Eden is actually kind of dressed a little bit like a medieval princess for the occasion.
Yes, she found some old clothes somewhere. Apparently Philippe has a wife that's also helping at the chateau. Victoria tells Martin their relationship is over. Later, Martin bursts into Pearl's apartment, still thinking he's Cruz, and demands that he stop seeing Victoria. Victoria arrives to tell Martin that she's just doing a sculpture of Pearl. Pearl says Martin's got him confused with his pal Cruz. Victoria's face kind of falls when he says it. At Martin's hotel room, Victoria tells Martin that Cruz is going to marry Eden. And Martin says, from what I understand, that's not so certain. So I don't know if Victoria will remember that phrase, somehow figuring out that maybe Eden is the one who sent Martin after her. Marty tries to kiss her, and Victoria says she's never loved him. And then he slaps her. Good thing I'm wearing my Reverse Flash shirt today. It's Martin Ellis has taken a negative turn.
Yeah, he's turned into a bad guy. And I'm sure he has a pretty strong arm, too, given he's a tennis pro.
Well, maybe knowing that he's only going to be here to the end of next week, maybe he'll fly out the window of the presidential suite next. Alice has breakfast with Paul at the Orient Express, as you might expect. He forgets his badge, and when she sees it, she has a flashback of her father being shot by a policeman. She goes to visit Carolyn to ask about the incident, and Carolyn confirms her thought that her father did not die after the gunshot, that he did recover. She wonders how come my mother or you never tried to find me after my dad vanished. So that is obviously leading into the search for Alice's father. Carolyn seemed a little bit hesitant about talking about it to Alice. I think she was hiding something. So I don't know what the tale was with why, her dad was shot. But yeah, clearly Carolyn was not telling Alice the whole story.
So Alice is going to have two people to search for now. Her father and, of course, Pearl's brother.
Lionel and Jane have set up a table in the middle of the Capwell atrium where they are dusting off artifacts. Cece comes in and says, "There's dust all over my house. I think I'll call Sacramento for a time limit on this thing." Lionel says, "We're not going to rush. After millions of years, the bones are very brittle, like your own." A photographer and a professor from the university are also on hand. And the professor mentions having met Lionel years earlier on a dig. I think it was in Tanzania. I'll have to re-listen to that. So that's interesting. It kind of reminds me of when Lionel was at the museum a lot, a few years ago, having some links to Lionel's past. So I don't know.
He also mentions Olduvai Gorge and Dr. Leakey, so he is traveling in Leakey in very exalted, academic circles.
Lionel invites Carolyn and Jane to go on a boat ride, but Jane opts out, saying three's a crowd, and Lionel said, well, that was kind of the point. Lionel tells Carolyn he's not over Augusta, and he could use a good friend. Jane watches from behind a planter as they hug. I feel like Lionel might be getting over Augusta maybe faster than he suspects. And that will just leave Jane with no one. But Pearl will be single, I imagine.
Well, we know that eventually Jane will reinvent herself to be Ross's ex-wife on Friends. So.
But she's got a few years for that.
Yeah.
Speaking of people on other shows, we saw Alan Miller on McCloud yesterday. He will be playing Harland Richards at some point in the future on Santa Barbara. Ted wakes up on the couch in the presidential suite and flips off the couch onto his hands and then walks on his hands around the room. But Todd McKee was very excited to be able to pull his little stunt on the show.
This is probably, I surmise this is something he was just showing off behind the scenes, and they said, hey, let's incorporate that into a storyline.
So Haley doesn't let on how impressed she is. Haley suggests that if they can't work things out, they should get a divorce, since they haven't consummated their marriage. She says, I suppose before doesn't count.
Couldn't they get annulled at that point then?
That's true, yes. I think she then says maybe an annulment. Ted says they'll end up in jail, so they will have to work it out somehow. They have breakfast at the Orient Express, and Gina gifts them a getaway at the Lover's Roost in Monterey. And she's talked Cece into lending them the jet to get there. Now, we drove to Monterey from San Francisco. It didn't strike me as a jet landing strip kind of town, especially, not being that far from Santa Barbara. I would think by the time you got to the airport and switched to a jet and landed whatever nearest airport is to Monterey that could have driven there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an area that has a higher income bracket, I would say, but it's, well, certainly Carmel, which is near Monterey, is sort of this little town, as you say, not really a big landing strip kind of place.
Well, we'll look it up. They decide it would be best to get out of town, even if they don't enjoy being at the Lover's Roost. And Ted says he'll go to the radio station to let them know. So he's still working at the radio station, even though it's the middle of the semester, theoretically.
Yeah, we're not hearing much about anyone's schooling, are we?
No, Ted's still working at the university radio station, but can just take a few days off. After having been in jail for a few days, can take a few more days off school to go on a honeymoon. Huh, interesting. Haley tells Jane that Mason had all their charges dropped and that she and Ted got married to avoid going to jail. Ted and Haley argue again, and Ted damages her suitcase while they're packing for the trip. He ends up tying it up with cord and suggesting they go to the Capwell house to get another one. Haley says that Jane has offered to move into the Lockridge mansion so that she and Ted can have the apartment. When she was talking to Jane, Jane actually said, after all, you and Ted found this place. And for some reason, I thought when Ted and Haley were looking for a place, that it was actually already Jane's place and that Jane had advertised for a roommate or something. But I guess that's not true. I guess because Jane and Ted and Haley were all there that first day that they all moved in. So I don't know. Maybe they just grabbed Jane when they needed a third. I don't know.
Do we know who is staying in Kelly's old apartment?
No, I don't
Anyone?
think we've heard anything about it since
I mean,
Dylan
she's
went
had
out the
2
window.
apartments. I guess maybe they both have different people in them now.
Yeah, because Kelly said, I kept the old one, right? And then she moved upstairs. So technically she has 2 apartments in that near the waterfront place.
And I know Mason and Ted were living together in one of them, way back.
Mason's got a much fancier place now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know why no one's living in there. I guess even when Kelly had to live in the boathouse, even when she was in town for the wedding. And, of course, Jane seemed kind of certain that she could rent a room at the Lockridge mansion without checking with anyone. I imagine Lionel will be fine with that. And then Haley says to Ted, by the way, since you don't like surprises, Lily is Gina's daughter.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, great, says Ted. And thus ended a Wednesday episode of Santa Barbara. So we'll be back after we watch episode 570. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
What we're after here are bones that are millions of years old with decay. They're very brittle, like your own.
This is Santa Barbara's distinguished district attorney.
Eye to eye with Santa Barbara's extinguished district attorney.
Whoa, you got two way with words. You should take your vocabulary and do something with it, like a game show host.
I gather Lizzie Borden is indisposed.
Oh, she's in the shower.
Gina always lands on her feet, usually with her spiked heels planted firmly in somebody else's eyes.
It has lockjaw written all over it, sweetheart. I mean, can you imagine, like, the pastor saying to you, do you, Gina, take C.C. to be a lawful wedded husband? You'd be saying, it sound like you come from Vassar. Sweetheart, but you love using your mouth. I mean, think about your jaw. Do you know sign language?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 570 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Thursday, October 23rd, 1986. And today, Emilia Clarke is born. That is
Wow.
the actress from Game of Thrones. Eden tells the ghost of Anne not to kill herself again and be with Edward. Philippe wonders how he will now attract tourists now that his ghosts are gone.
Apparently that's all it took.
Yep.
For the last 400 years, no one had thought of that before.
Yep. Eden tracks down Martin Ellis at the Orient Express, and he tells her he's looking for this Cruz Castillo fellow, and he's going to solve both their problems. So Eden urges Cruz to, let's race back to Santa Barbara. Cruz, of course, is suspicious over all the phone calls Eden's been making.
Plus, he knows Eden.
Yeah. But I don't know if he has figured it out that Martin Ellis is involved. But probably tomorrow when they get back to town, they'll run into him. And both Cruz and Victoria will figure out that Eden sicked him on Victoria. Lionel finds out that Jane has moved into the Lockridge mansion. Someone comes over and says, of course he's camping out at the Capwell atrium still. Someone comes over and says, hey, there's all these boxes being delivered to the front door. Jane Wilson is moving in. Lionel said, oh, I did tell you at one point you could move in at any time, so I guess he's fine with it. She wants to pay her way, though. Carolyn wonders if there's something more between Jane and Lionel tells her that they've struck a delicate balance. He has dinner with Carolyn, but she finds that it is too romantic, considering they are just friends. Jane doesn't buy her story that she just wants to be friends with Lionel. So I don't know, she's playing it kind of close to the vest. Is she interested in Lionel, or is she just wanting a friend? I mean, Jane says this is a long pattern.
Yeah, or is this one of her moves to move a person from the friendship category into the romantic category?
Jane runs into Cece and says they're not exactly strangers, considering his affair with her mother. Cece seems a bit surprised that she knows about that. Later, Cece meets up with Carolyn outside the front door of the Lockridge house. And Carolyn makes sure that Cece didn't tell her, and Cece says he doesn't want Jane to know either. What is their secret? It's not clear if... At first I thought, oh, did Jane remember Cece from when she was young? But then Cece seemed to be surprised. So, I don't know. Could Cece be her father? Courtney invites Keith to Madeline's bungalow. Courtney has some amazing flashbacks this episode. Her first one is to watching Keith and Madeline make love while she stands in the alcove taking photos. These, of course, are the photos she's been threatening Keith with. And then a later flashback where she confronts Madeline, and Madeline says she knew the whole time that Courtney was there taking photos. And just taunts Courtney about everything, about David. And, for some reason, dares Courtney to stop her, which sounds very much like a prelude to murder. Then Keith arrives, and he says the same thing. He too knew that Courtney was there, and that he and Madeline laughed about it afterwards. He says, oh, I bet you've been looking at those perverted photos every night. And then he tries to make some rather rough romantic advances to her. I don't know if he's trying to force her hand or if he really is interested in her, but she makes it, I think, clear that she is not actually romantically interested in Keith. So what she's doing is not entirely clear to me.
No, but this whole episode is definitely making a case for Courtney being, perhaps at least a bit mentally unstable. More and more sort of cockeyed as we go through the show. And, in hindsight, maybe this explains some of her behavior with Pearl, actually. Teaming up with him, having such a crush on him, which I always thought was a bit odd, and following him into a mental institution, and then this adventure in freeing Kelly and everything. Maybe this explains a bit of that.
She has another nightmare this time. She is kneeling over Madeline's dead body and has blood on her hands, and once again wakes up screaming. So we do see Madeline in this episode. Terry Farrell as Madeline has in all the flashbacks and the dream sequence. So yeah, this seems to indicate that Courtney did kill Madeline, but in a way it makes me think Courtney doesn't remember doing it, if that is the case. Or Courtney discovered the body and has sort of blocked that out too, because obviously she didn't reveal any of that when Madeline's body was discovered.
Yeah, we seem to be heading towards some kind of maybe dissociative personality disorder or something like that. It's a possibility.
Maybe the other personality will be Madeline. Cece tells Mason to use his powers as DA to get that tape from Gina, and Mason comes up with an idea. Next thing we see is Cece visiting Gina and giving her one more chance to hand over that tape that will clear Kelly, and Gina says, nope, I'm going to keep that tape until after we're married or I'll destroy it. And then Mason and 2 police officers come around the corner, and Mason says, all 3 of us have heard your confession that you are hiding evidence in an active murder investigation, and they promptly arrest Gina. They handcuff her, and then the next thing you know, they're strapping her into a polygraph machine. But luckily for her, Keith shows up just at that time, and he actually says, if you don't release her, I'll see to it that the tape is destroyed. So it seems like that's Gina's backup plan for the tape. But I don't think that was really true, because of course Keith doesn't know where the tape is. So.
I didn't quite understand that, because it would seem like then he is destroying evidence of something she's being charged with. So I didn't see why that would hold water, really. Yeah,
Cece said, oh, you've known since you became DA that Kelly was innocent. So, but I guess they kind of figured Keith had them over a barrel, I guess, because they did all leave. So, then Mason returns and tells Keith that Gina has no intention of pushing for him to be the Capwell counsel. Gina always lands on her feet, usually with her spiked heels planted firmly in somebody's eyes. And he suggests that Keith should ask Gina what her plans are, like, oh, what's my salary going to be? And see if she doesn't try to distract him with sex. So when Gina comes out of the shower, he does exactly that. He tries to bring up the job, and she starts to kiss him. So he realizes that perhaps Mason is right. Gina doesn't really plan to take care of him. And the next thing you know, Gina's unconscious, and Keith and his buddy have injected her with sodium pentothal and are interrogating her. Keith is asking her where the tape is, and she makes some amusing jokes about the Nixon tapes and masking tape, and the guy says, oh, she seems to have trained herself to avoid interrogation. But Keith accidentally stumbles upon a completely different line of questioning, which leads him to discover that Gina is the one that planted the pills in his litter box that caused him to lose his job. And Gina seems quite gleeful about it in her drugged up state.
And I think, if I recall, the way they actually set this up was that Keith convinced Gina that she needed a doctor.
Oh, well, she stepped on a thumbtack, and he convinced her she needed a tetanus shot. That's right. Oh, I see. And then he called his friend to give her that. Okay, I didn't actually make that connection, so that's good. Yeah. Julia tells Lionel that she's going to have a baby. Lionel congratulates her at first, and she says, no, I'm still looking for the father. I need the right man. Which Lionel immediately assumes means him. He's somewhat taken aback, but she says, no, I'm not proposing incest or murder, because that's what Augusta would do to both of us. Then they talk a little bit about the 2 job offers that she has, the one from Mason and the one from Keith. And he's trying to talk her into at least taking one of them. Julia says, well, it's enough to make a girl take up street sweeping. So she doesn't think either of them would be a great boss. Later at the Orient Express, she's at the bar contemplating who the father of her baby should be when Mason appears and mentions that he talked to Lionel about her decision and that he's her man. Julia seems taken aback that Lionel would talk to Mason about her wanting a father for her baby. Mason says, I have more to offer than anyone else in Santa Barbara. You can't possibly be considering Keith Timmons over me. Julia says, what? He talked to Keith about this too? Julia starts to run away in horror at the thought of either Mason or Keith as the father of her baby. But then Mason mentions the salary he's offering, and she realizes he's been talking about the job offer. What did you think I was talking about, says Mason. And Julia says, well, I was thinking of something else. And he says, well, maybe I can take care of that for you too. Don't rule me out. And Julia smiles and says, I won't rule you out. So, what does that mean? Is she actually considering Mason Capwell as the father of her baby? Will it be the first Capwell grandchild that was mentioned again a day or two ago by Mason when I think he was talking to Gina about... I know what it was. Ted and Haley. When Gina was so gung-ho about Ted and Haley getting married, and she mentioned having kids, and Mason said, oh, maybe it was Cece. Oh, you're still thinking about that inheritance for the first grandchild of C.C. Capwell. I think it's male grandchild, isn't it? So, Anyway, will Ted and Haley be racing against Mason and Julia? Well, that's it for this Thursday episode. We had a full cast credits. Rosa is still in the credits. Sophia is spelled the same way as she's been lately, without a slash in her name. Robin Wright's been in the credits this whole time. And we have a change of name. Stacey Edwards is now playing Haley Benson Capwell. And, of course, Santana is still stuck with the name Castillo. Madeline was played by Terry Davis, and Philippe was played by Christopher Weeks, who apparently is really named Jacques de Leon, but was credited as Christopher Weeks. Interesting. And that is it for the Thursday episode. We will close out the week tomorrow with episode 571 of Santa Barbara, and then we will be off on our trip. And I will schedule this to be posted, I think, on Sunday. I think now we're on Sunday schedule. And then we'll be back in 2 weeks. So we certainly won't have time to do a whole week's worth of watching in that one day. So then episode after this is definitely going to be late. Right, we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Your guest list of one has arrived. I'll just sneak out the back way.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
Oh, by the way, if I happen to fall into a dinosaur pit in the dark, dig me up in a million years, okay?
I just wonder what the price tag is, Keith.
Well, it's not going to be cheap. First of all, I want you to resign as district attorney.
Is that it? I'm glad to see that my career and reputation mean so much to you, Dad.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 571 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, October 24th, 1986. Carolyn and Lionel drink champagne on the yacht. They talk about Warren, and Carolyn says, well, I'm sure he got your support. Mine didn't. Yours, says Lionel. Jane, says Carolyn. Jane is your only child? Yeah, says Carolyn, after a short pause.
Suspicious.
Alice seems very happy staying with you. Lionel says, since Augusta and my children have left the house, I learned I need to be needed, and I don't like being alone. Carolyn says, well, the only reason I came back to Santa Barbara is to try to know my daughter again. And then she suggests maybe they should head back, because she's worried things are getting too romantic with Lionel again. Lily shows Mason the newspaper. Gina has invited all of her friends and neighbors to the wedding. And then someone later says she's having a bachelorette party too. So there'll be some more hijinks, I imagine.
Oh, I would think so.
Lily says, oh, this would be a perfect setup for my healing because of all the people being there. Lily later runs the plan by Gina, saying, oh, if only I could heal someone. Gina says, oh, I've got this hurt tooth. And then later, a few seconds later, Gina says, oh, wait a minute, no one knows this, but I can walk. And Lily says, I've known for weeks. So it seems like Gina is in on the plan.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
And she doesn't mind that Lily will upstage her on her wedding day. Sophia reads the same paper and decides to go to Italy for the rest of the 6 months. So she spends the whole day packing, and as she walks out the door with her suitcases, she changes her mind and runs back into Cece's arms. I thought, oh, maybe the actress has got a vacation coming up, and she'll just be gone for 2 weeks. But then it looked like she meant 6 months. She said, oh, I can be with Kelly. And so is Kelly back in Italy then? Because she was speaking German last time. Gina wakes up, and Keith reveals that he has recorded her confession. He wants to trade it for Kelly's tape. And then somehow that morphs into him wanting 50% of all the money that Gina gets from Cece. Gina is against all of these things, but in the end she agrees to sign it. She then meets with a magician who gives her a pen filled with disappearing ink, which she uses to sign the contract that Keith brings to her. She asks Keith now to hand over that audio tape, and after she searches him, she finds another half-dozen copies hidden amongst his body. And when she's got them all, the disappearing ink does its thing, and Gina's signature vanishes, and Keith reveals he's got the master copies safely locked away. Gina says, no, I don't think Mason is going to risk arresting me, so I don't care. You can give that to Mason. So then Keith comes up with an alternate plan and decides that maybe he can get money directly from Cece. So he goes and sits with Cece and Mason and says that he can get his hands on Gina's tape or something to that effect. So it's kind of like he's not revealing that there's a two-step process involved with this other tape. But in exchange, Mason has to resign as DA. Of course, there'll be some money involved too. And he says, of course, I'll let you free Kelly before you resign. So it's interesting. Cece says, is that all? And Mason says, oh, I'm glad you hold my career in such high esteem. So I wonder if Cece will try to push for Mason to agree to step down as DA after such a short amount of time to free Kelly.
We will find out. I think there's probably going to be a lot more hijinks between Keith and Gina as well.
Yes. So I guess Keith doesn't have any idea where the tape is. Gina hasn't told anyone, and she's, I guess, self-hypnotized herself not to crack under pressure.
Apparently that's a thing.
Eden sees Gina and Cece's wedding announcement in the paper and races home. They tell her what's going on and tell her not to confront Gina. Eden immediately confronts Gina. Gina says, I guess Sophia can't keep her mouth shut. Anyway, I'm going to be your stepmother again soon. Won't that be fun? So Gina's giving Sophia a lot of leeway, I guess, up until the wedding day. And then I think she's going to, crack the whip. Victoria has a black eye from where Martin hit her. Martin visits Cruz and tells him that he and Victoria are going back to L.A. Of course, Cruz is a bit confused throughout this whole thing. First, he doesn't know who Martin is. He's gotten all these answering machine messages while he was gone from Martin without him really identifying who he is. And Martin is then angry when Cruz calls her Tori, and he says, I've called her that for years. And then he says, if you can't hang on to Tori, that's your problem. So Eden runs into Victoria at the Orient Express and realizes that Martin beat her up. So Eden is now panicked that she has caused all of this.
Yeah.
And she tells Cruz, maybe you should check on Victoria before she goes to L.A. Cruz doesn't really take the hint and says, it should be fine. So then when Victoria tells Martin she's not going to L.A. with him, he hits her again. Eden is skulking outside because I think she's worried for Victoria. She overhears the fight starting and uses a payphone to call Cruz, who bursts through the door and arrests Martin. So Eden watches from the shadows because I guess Chris didn't realize she was there when he burst in, but he's got a weird look on his face, like she's wondering. I think he's wondering, what does Eden have to do with this, you know? So.
And I kind of wondered if, I wasn't really sure if maybe she was starting to realize that perhaps she had put herself in a bit of jeopardy as well. By, you know, she fed this guy this whole story. And so maybe she's not just in jeopardy in terms of her relationship with Cruz, but she could actually be in physical jeopardy from this guy as well.
That's true. We've still got 5 more episodes with John and Wesley Shipp, so either he's going to be behind bars the whole time, or he could come after Eden as well as Victoria.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, he's got to realize at this juncture that she is involved in this in some way.
And maybe Cruz is putting it together because, of course, he remembers all the phone calls. I don't know if he necessarily knew Martin was in Monaco, or he would have put it together a lot quicker, I think. Or Monte Carlo. Well, same thing. Wow, that was a lot for a Friday episode, after we had a couple of slow episodes. Not slow episodes. A couple of fairly straightforward episodes this week, and but just a lot's happening. So, and Sophia also mentioned to Eden, by the way, Ted and Haley are married. So,
one thing that didn't happen, and I've kind of lost hope of it ever happening, actually, is this high school reunion that we had heard about a long time ago. Maybe it's come and gone. You know, maybe they all missed it. That happens.
I wonder if Robin Wright leaving the show messed up their plans for things like that too, and they kind of pulled back on things. So, like the way the Courtney's sister's murder has sort of got put on hold for a few months, but now it seems to be coming back into the forefront. So we got one more week. Next Friday is Halloween, so I will be wearing my Halloween costume all week, because why not? It's May in 2024.
Now I'm thinking, isn't Cece's birthday usually in October? We haven't heard anything about that.
It's usually quite close to Halloween, I think. Yeah. So there may be something coming up for that. And of course, no one has mentioned that Janice and Nick have left town. Yeah. So I'm sure as a kid I must have known, unless it was like in Soap Opera Digest or something, and that's the only way I knew that they'd left, because usually, before the internet, you didn't really know about comings and goings that much. So
as a kid, you were probably wondering when you were going to see them again.
Yeah, but then as I said, I did specifically have that. Was annoyed that they left 2 days apart and that they didn't leave together. So
you must have known.
Either we find out very soon, and it was soon enough that I remembered that they just left last week, or maybe it was in Soap Opera Digest or something. I've been looking to see if I have any old ones from those times, and I don't think so, because I don't think I had a lot of extra money to spend on things. So. I think I may have bought 1 or 2, but I can't find them, so they must be stored away in a bag in a box somewhere. And when I finally get around to sorting all my stuff from high school, I think I'll find it. So, anyway, that is it for week 117, and I've looked ahead, and it looks like we're going to have some guest stars.
Ooh, how exciting.
I'm guessing they will be for the wedding.
Guests or performers,
They
perhaps?
won't be, I don't want to give too much away, but I think if the wedding's in 2 weeks, I think we will see 2 big stars of 1986 at Gina's wedding. So, that'll be fun to look forward to. And we will be off to New York tomorrow for the Another World's 60th anniversary get-together, which is very exciting, and hope to see Dr. Renfro there. So we may be a bit late with the next episode because we're coming back on Monday the 13th. So we will see maybe in about 3 weeks with the next episode, encompassing week 118 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I'll be back, beautiful.
See you, gorgeous.
You know, if I waited till people wanted to see me, I'd never go anywhere.